Time is 5:30 and a quorum is present. So I will call this meeting of the Plan Commission of February 8th to order. First, we will hear from our technical facilitator.
All right, well, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. The chair, clerk, and technical facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the board, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda is public comment, and I see no one registered for public comment. So we will move on to communications, disclosures, and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals? Seeing no raised hands, the next item on our agenda are the minutes for the meetings of January 25th, the regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands, is there a motion? A motion has been made by Commissioner Cantrell to approve the minutes. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. And we will come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the minutes are unanimously approved. Upcoming meetings. We have a regular meeting on February 22nd, as well as on March 8th and March 22nd. The next item on our agenda is the Planning Division Annual Report. We will go to that, and then after that, we will do the consent agenda. Ms. Stouter.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I will do a very brief overview of this report, and I hope you'll take the time to skim through it yourselves. I want to start by thanking the incredible team of folks that I'm humbled to work with each and every day. This has been a really different year for all of us, but I think as a group of colleagues, you just couldn't ask for a better, more supportive group to help get through this year. And I also want to just extend that thanks to all of you. And I hope that you feel this too, but we really couldn't do our work without your time, input, and guidance. And really, really thank you for all of the time you put in and your dedication to the city. And I will promise to keep this quite short, but wanted to just bring up the annual report, which each of you have on Legistar. It's also just been added to our website earlier today. And this is our attempt to summarize and try to highlight some of the work that we've been doing. We've had an annual report for the last 3 years now, and And this one is quite different than some others. I think this year, as you can see, we've spent a lot more time on the pandemic response, which has impacted some of our other work, but we've really learned a lot about working as a team across the city with other agencies on projects like making the election happen, stenciling in parks and playgrounds to encourage folks to stay a safe distance apart, and many more projects as well. I think several of us had an opportunity to experience the city's Emergency Operations Center, and that was just a fascinating educational experience. And we expect to continue to spend time on recovery in the years to come, particularly this year. But wanted to highlight some of those efforts that certainly weren't on our 2020 work plan initially. Art is another one. Arts Administrator Karen Wolf is always doing amazing work throughout the city. This year, she spent so much time working with artists on State Street, really in response to a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement that occurred, as you will recall. And I hope that many of you had an opportunity to actually be on State Street and see some of this amazing work. Karen and others continue to work on making sure that it's memorialized over time and saved. And just wanted to give her a special shout out, even though I know she works closely with the Madison Arts Commission, not the Plan Commission. But she was just a complete rock star throughout this entire year, or the year of 2020. Things you're much more familiar with on the development review summary page. We did have a record year from what I can recall in my time with the city, with over 4,600 multifamily housing units were approved, and that's a gross number, so it doesn't net out anything that was proposed for demolition. But that is in comparison to recent years where we've averaged anything but I think between 2,000 and 3,000 per year, and in some cases even less than that. So the Plan Commission, as you know, was quite busy in 2020. And that's just one number that really shows you the volume of the work done in these meetings. Have some highlighted projects there, and mentioned some of our ordinance work, the Regional Mixed Use District and the Bird Glass Ordinance that you'll recall from earlier in the year. We also talk about our data and mapping projects. We attached part of the town of Blooming Grove, preparing to attach portions of other significant towns in future years. The adopted plans that we focused on for 2000 are really the Oscar Mayer and then the city's first historic preservation plan. And as you know, some of these others, the Easttown, the Odana, South Madison, and the Reiner plan are ongoing and will be either completed this year or shortly thereafter. And also some of the work we do within the community, whether we're partnering with with community groups or often other government agencies. These were just two highlights from 2020. Our neighborhood grants program, we really tried to do outreach and get a set of new applicants based on an analysis we had done with our racial equity and social justice tool. And it was very fruitful. We had several new applicants for that program and some really innovative projects to build leadership and capacity in our neighborhoods. And then the 2020 census, that ended up taking a really interesting set of really interesting turns as well, as you might recall, due in part to the pandemic and extending the census work in order to increase that response. And our team was right in the middle of that and worked well with community partners to really maximize the response in Madison. And that's where we'll end it today. But again, just want to thank all of you for all of your work and input and guidance throughout the year. Again, definitely couldn't accomplish things without you. And while we've accomplished some kind of strange things this year, we're really grateful for all of your kind of steadfast dedication to the city. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ms. Stouter. Are there any questions about the report? Alder Rummel.
Thank you. Thanks for that report. I've always enjoyed them. I had kind of curious, and it's not really about the report basics, but the Greater Easttown planning. Can you talk a little about where that's heading, what we can expect, given that, with the men's shelter being proposed out there and some amount of neighborhood, getting a lot of input on that. So curious what that's about, how it fits in.
Sure. Well, we're still continuing that process and really envision a lot of what on a broad scale, a lot of what the comprehensive plan envisioned, that, one day that Easttown Mall area can accommodate a great deal of our growth and see it as an opportunity for a mixed use center. We do see it as an opportunity for application of the regional mixed use district at some point in the future, not the entire area, but there's so much opportunity in that part of the city with all of the surface parking lots that are there now. I think one of the major challenges will really be working with property owners to phase in the infrastructure needed to support residents in that area. So new streets, parks, transit is a huge part of the equation, and it's already well served by transit. So that process continues. We do anticipate bringing that to the Plan Commission in an early draft form to get some of your input before it's formally introduced, but hope that it can actually be adopted yet this year as a planning framework for that area.
Just one follow-up. Thank you, Heather. Can you talk about, any of the resident property owner engagement that is coming up or has already happened?
Sure. So we've, as you might imagine, we've pivoted to a virtual meeting setting there and in all of our planning efforts. I believe there have been 4 to 6 different large Zoom meetings that have been well attended by area residents, property owners, businesses, and others. We've made some special efforts to reach out to the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Latinx Chamber of Commerce, to make sure that their voices are right in the mix, even though they may not be involved in that area right now. We believe that the area holds a lot of opportunity for new businesses. Want to make sure that we're weaving in their voices definitely as well. And I think moving forward, we'll continue to meet with folks in a virtual setting, and we continue to advertise opportunities broadly. I believe the next one will actually be likely in late March, the next opportunity for resident engagement or property owner business engagement in that particular planning process.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Solheim.
I just wanted to say thank you for putting together the report. And, it's easy, for me at least, to get caught in kind of the development review and the planning projects that we look at. So it was really fun to read about all of the different efforts that you've done with other departments. And I think it's really impressive, all of the work that you did with the other departments, especially in a year where everyone was remote, and especially when we had a lot of development going underway in the meantime. So just wanted to thank you for all of that.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I'd just like to second Commissioner Solheim's appreciation. I do think that it is important to document what has gone on over the course of the year. And a lot went on this past year, in addition to our routine kinds of things. A number of other things were accomplished. And with the COVID situation, it made it that much more challenging to do. So thank you, Heather, and your staff for the work. Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. It is the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which the staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by various city departments. on which the applicant accepts those conditions, and there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to the item tonight. And included on our consent agenda are referrals as well as new business. These items are all placed onto a consent agenda, and they're addressed at the beginning of our meeting, so that people who are interested in those items can disconnect unless a member of the commission requests separation, in which case the item is removed from the consent agenda and taken in the regular course of business. Of the items before us today, we have quite a number on the consent agenda. Those are agenda item 3, 4, and then 6 is for referral, and then agenda items 7 and 8 for approval on the consent agenda. Are there any requests for separation? Seeing no raised hands, no requests for separation, I will read those items then into the minutes. The first one is agenda item 3, Legistar 63802, amending the general ordinance to create design and installation requirements for cluster mailbox units. Next is agenda item 4, Legistar 63855, creating general ordinances to amend a planned development district at property located at 7102 U.S. Highways 12 and 18 in 16th Alder District. And then for referral to February 22nd at the request of the applicant, agenda item 6, Legistar 63476, located at 126 Langdon Street, 2nd Alder District. Then for approval on the consent agenda, agenda item 7, Legistar 63477, located at 1215 Chandler Street, 13th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential consistent 3 district for an accessory building exceeding 10% of lot area to allow construction of a detached garage. And last, agenda item 8, Legistar 63478, located at 1502 West Broadway, 14th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the commercial corridor transitional district for a vehicle access, sales, and service window for a restaurant tenant in a 3-story commercial business. So I will open the public hearing on all of those. I do not believe there are any registrants that wish to speak. So I will close the public hearing. Is there a motion on the consent agenda? Commissioner Cantrell?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. We have a motion and a second, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Now on to the single item that we have on our agenda for a full public hearing, agenda item 5, Legistar 63858, creating section 28.022 through 00490 and section 28.022 through 00491 of the Madison General Ordinances to amend a planned development district to approve an amended general development plan and specific implementation plan at property located at 223 South Pinckney Street, 4th Alder District. And I believe that we will have a brief overview by Mr. Furkow. Mr. Furkow, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the Plan Commission. I'm going to do a quick overview before we get into the public hearing tonight. As the chair mentioned, we have an amended plan development before you. I'll just touch on the project history, noting that the history is summarized in more detail in your staff report. The original zoning approvals for the Judge Doyle development were approved in 2017. That approval allowed for 3 12-story glass-clad buildings. On the subject property, which in the staff report is noted as part of Block 105, the development was a 12-story hotel approved with approximately 153 units. As far as alterations on the site, in 2019, the Plan Commission reviewed and the Common Council ultimately approved an alteration to that hotel development, and that removed the on-site underground parking from that development. And so that was approved, remaining as an approximately 153 12-story unit with no on-site parking. As noted in the staff report, similar at that time, at a similar time, the Common Council also approved a lease agreement to provide 40 off-site parking stalls in the nearby downtown parking ramp. Moving ahead to the project description and the alterations that are before you tonight, as I said, the original building was approved at 12 stories. It was primarily glass-clad tower and had about 153 dwelling units. Tonight, among the key alterations that are proposed, one is reducing the height of the building. It is now proposed as a 9-story building, so it's 3 stories shorter. The original approval required a conditional use for mechanical projections into the capital view preservation limit, and the need for that conditional use would no longer be necessary if the project is approved as presented in its smaller form. Among the other major alterations before you this evening is the character of the building. Where the building was primarily approved as a glass facade, the revised building before you tonight is approved with a masonry base and then upper level glass with different metal panels as shown in the plans and as will be presented to you by the development team shortly. As noted in the staff report, the item did receive a recommendation from the Landmarks Commission, and originally for the taller building, based on the shorter building and the redesign, this proposal was reviewed administratively by the preservation planner, provided a favorable recommendation. From there, the city's Urban Design Commission reviewed the proposal and provided a favorable recommendation, granting a recommendation of initial approval with 4 approval conditions that are noted in your staff report. With that, there's a condition noting that this item would return to the Urban Design Commission prior to the issuance of building permits. Finally, I would just note that there is a revised condition that is recommended in an addendum that came out this afternoon regarding possible encroachments into the existing sidewalk easement, which would require one, to clarify whether or not there are in fact some encroachments into the sidewalk easements, and then to its condition as recommended by city engineering mapping. This is condition number 32, that those encroachments be removed. This relates primarily to outdoor eating and related furniture, planter type improvements that may be in portions of that easement. Finally, just wanted to note that this project is subject to the approval standards for plan developments and zoning map amendments. The Planning Division believes that the approval standards can be found met and recommends approval, and will be available to answer questions after the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Furkow. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is Nate Gundrum, 700 Meadow Lane North, Minneapolis, Minnesota, in support and wishing to speak, noting that he is not representing anybody. He might want to maybe correct that. I think he's representing the developer. Mr. Gundrum.
Sure. Thank you, members of the commission. My name is Nate Gundrum. I'm with Mortensen, part of the development team. So apologies if I checked the wrong box on the registration form. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, just fine. You have 3 minutes.
Wonderful. Sounds good. With me tonight is Aaron Ebent with Kaler Slater Architects, and also available to speak is JP Beitler with the Beitler organization. I did want to start out by building on a couple things Kevin mentioned. Obviously, there is a design that's currently approved by Planning Commission and City Council. And Kevin, if you wouldn't mind just advancing one slide. That's what you see on the screen. The currently approved design is this all-glass tower, and we are choosing to modify this design for a few important reasons, which I'd like to touch on. First of all, we took this opportunity to reduce the overall height of the building. As Kevin mentioned, the design that's currently approved that we're looking at includes a mechanical penthouse and an elevator overrun that exceeds the Capitol View preservation height limit. And our proposed design has reduced the overall height of the building such that we are now under the Capitol View preservation height limit, including our mechanical penthouse and elevator overrun. And then secondly, and perhaps most importantly, we did want to be respectful of the current design direction across Pinckney Street on the Stonehouse housing project that's currently under construction. And we wanted to make sure that our hotel design is complementary from an architecture and materiality perspective. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was just the level of community engagement that we've had. You know, despite COVID, we've had a chance to meet with the Capitol Neighborhood Steering Committee on 2 separate occasions, once in November and then again earlier this month. We also met with the larger neighborhood group on January 14th. And then, you know, of course, as Kevin mentioned, we've been in front of UDC on 2 separate occasions, once for an informational meeting, informational presentation in November, and then subsequently on the 27th of January, where we received initial approval. So we look forward to your feedback tonight. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Aaron Ebent.
Thank you, Mr. Gundrum. Our next registrant is Aaron Ebent. Kaler Slater, Wisconsin Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In support, wishing to speak, representing Kaler Slater. Mr. Ebent.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Easement with Kaler Slater, principal and lead design architect on the project. If you want to advance to the next slide, please. What you see here is the overall context of the buildings that's surrounding the Stonehouse development, with the metal panels and on top of the parking podium that is the city parking facility. Some of the other buildings in context, which you know well. You can go to the next one. This is an overall view, aerial view, on the last one actually, of the kind of proposed development within this. The building does respect the curve form that's been set up by the Judge Doyle Square Master Plan. And so the massing is expressed as 2 parallel bars, a concave one and a convex one, that are flanked together and with a centerpiece in the street. You can go to the next one. The site plan is here with Pinckney Street down the center, Wilson on the right, and Doty on the left. The main entrance of the hotel is at the center portion, and there's a curved canopy that comes out to grab that area. There's a valet drop-off lane in the center to get the cars out of the way and let the free flow of traffic through. We have some enhanced streetscaping with some decorative paving that happens around the site, and then some planters and bike racks and so forth to round out the edges. We've pulled the building away from both Wilson and Doty Street, the orthogonal edges of the building, to let that curve form express. And when we did that, that peeled away the building from those streets and allowed an opportunity for a little public plaza space on the left and the right of the page there. Go to the next one. The first floor plan is organized with the main entry at the first floor, drop-off condition right at the center of the curve, pre-function space and meeting space to the right, bar and restaurant and dining to the left. So we have all these active uses as much as we can on the street facing on both Wilson, Pinckney, and Doty. The back of the project, if you will abut another future apartment building that's part of the SIP2 and has all the supporting spaces. You can go to the next one. Actually, skip to the typical floor plans of 260 guest rooms and go next. The overall building form is this. You see the curve, the concave curve facade here, clad in the striated metal panel that has a lot of texture and depth and relief. And then that's carved out with kind of a weaving of vertical and horizontal bands that frame out the windows for the guest rooms on the Pinckney Street facade. There's a glass slot, which is representing the corridor ends on the center of the building here, and then some articulation on the other piece. You can go to the next couple of slides, flip through those pretty quickly. You start to see the stone base rising up to support that and the canopy at the front door here, the weaving of the patterns of the guest rooms there, and then some of the activation that would happen here. This is where we might be in encroachment on some of the planters and bike racks, so we'll work through that. The next slide. Some details of the metal panel. We'll need to bring some of this information back to UDC, but basically it's a stone-based metal panel with glass facade. And then next slides. I think I'm about out of time too. You can flip through these elevations.
Yes, you are out of time. But thank you very much, Mr. Bent. We have one more registrant, J.P. Beitler, 707 Skokie Boulevard, Northbrook, Illinois, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions, representing Beitler Real Estate Services. Are there questions for any of the registrants? Alder Lemmer.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if Mr. Ebent could finish walking through the content he wanted to share, especially design changes that will be going to UDC for final approval.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Design changes that UDC wanted to see were a little bit more articulate, or a little bit more understanding of the metal panel system that's going on the building. What we were proposing is a series of patterned metal panels that you can kind of see in this striated horizontal pattern. They wanted to understand the details of that a little bit more. Overall, they loved the form of the building. They liked the look of it. There's no major changes to that. They just wanted a little bit more detail on that. Another area that they wanted us to explore from a design standpoint was, you can see on this Wilson Street view here, where we have the hotel signage and that vertical blade sign. They were asking for a little bit more articulation on that wall. So some of the things we're exploring with them, and we brought some options to them at the UDC meeting. They would have liked, or they would like to us to explore the possibility of adding some decorative lighting on that wall. So that's one of the areas from an architectural standpoint. And then the other last architectural item was really, they wanted to understand the rooftop screening and mechanicals. We have a preliminary rooftop plan, but they just wanted a little bit more information about all the pieces of equipment up there and how they're going to be screened. So those are the three main architectural issues. Couple landscape points that they wanted to clarify and understand some plant types. They thought there could be a few more plants in some of the planters and things like that. And then we have some bike racks that look like they might be encroaching in the public right away that we will get addressed.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about the outdoor seating area. I know there was an addendum, and I just wondered just if you had any more description of the, it's a busy corner, especially on the restaurant side, and just kind of what the thoughts were about how that will be a comfortable place to do outdoor dining, and if there's any other ideas you had to shield people from noise and pollution.
Well, we can't do much about noise pollution, but what we'd probably end up doing working with the restaurateur is we have these physical planters here, which have these bushes in as shown in this view. But I would imagine that ultimately the restaurateur would use a series of planters and tables to define those edges to kind of create it a little bit nicer, to keep it to be a nice space. There is you can kind of see in this view too, there's a pretty substantial overhang to the building. So that'll kind of help with the feeling of having it be a more intimate space in there. But that's part of the reason why we use the physical planters to kind of hold that street edge. That physical planter that's shown in the corner is the corner of our property. So the sidewalk has free flow access there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cantrell.
The urban design was interested in some changes to the Wilson Street side. Is the Doty Street side going to also have some changes? I assume those elevations are very similar.
Correct. Doty and Wilson are essentially the same elevation. So yeah, the whatever articulation we would do on Wilson would happen on Doty as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any further questions of any of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Cantrell.
The other development site on this property, I assume that will be separated off potentially, and I'm assuming also that will it have its own underground parking that would accommodate that's any use on that property? Kevin?
Thank you. I was waiting for the unmute to come through. Yes, the building, the other building on Block 105 is the one that was approved in 2017. So there is a valid approval for that building. That building was 12 stories and did include underground parking. It's a completely separate building and separate development that they don't share underground parking or amenities such as that. So it is a standalone building. And as of now, there is an approved development on that site.
Okay. One other question is the stone house. What's the height of the stone house building across the street?
That's, I believe it's 12 stories. It's essentially up to Capitol View. So it's as tall as it can be per the zoning code and state statute.
Okay. Thank you.
About 3 stories taller than this building.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff of Mr. Furco since he's now unmuted? Seeing no raised hands, I will be looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, I will recommend that the Plan Commission find the standards for zoning map amendment and plan developments are met and forward the zoning amendments rezoning 223 South Pinckney Street to amended plan development, general development plan, specific implementation district to the Common Council with a favorable recommendation.
And do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Cantrell, and then we will hear from Alder Verveer?
Sure. Just briefly, I think this is a nice addition to the downtown. It's providing hotels, hotel rooms near the Monona Terrace, which we've often indicated that is needed to attract larger venues. I think it's again and it's nice to see it's being brought forward. We've been waiting a long time for this development, so thanks to the developer.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Chairperson Zellers, and good evening to the entire commission. I do support the motion before you that you recommend to the Common Council approval tonight and find that the various standards for PD and zoning map amendments are met. I do want to, though, express that there are a few reservations when I say that I support this motion tonight. Mainly, they revolve around the concerns of the Neighborhood Association Steering Committee that remain outstanding. To give you some background, Capital Neighborhoods Incorporated has been engaged with the various starts and stops of that many-year odyssey known as Judge Doyle Square for well over a decade. And in fact, Chairperson Zellers very well might have been CNI president during much of that time in the early beginnings. So it's been well over a decade that volunteers from the neighborhood have been working with this development team and prior development teams, and so there is a bit of a admitted, I think, fatigue that has set in. With that said, I do want to attempt to speak on behalf of the Neighborhood Association Steering Committee, and their thoughts are very similar to mine. Unfortunately, no members of the steering committee were able to join you tonight for your public hearing, especially perhaps if they had known that this was going to come up so unusually early in your meeting, that you had such a beautifully brief meeting before you tonight, that would have been a different picture. But anyway, the chairperson of our steering committee is CNI President Eli Judge, and he and the other members of the committee were not able to again attend tonight. I do hope that the commission was able to review the written statement of the CNI Judge Doyle Square Steering Committee that was provided to the Urban Design Commission in advance of their last meeting. If you weren't able to see that, it can be found in the UDC Legistar file for this item that obviously is linked in several places in the staff report for the item before you. To cut to the chase, I believe that the steering committee simply did not have a sufficient amount of time and dialogue with the development team, and I'm not assigning blame anywhere, but the steering committee and I actually requested that this development team ask for referral at the last UDC meeting to allow for further dialogue. The development team, the applicants, declined that request with the rationale that they are desperately in search of financing to get this hotel finally off the ground, and time was very valuable to them in terms of going to the finance in communities that they are working with. They wanted proof of entitlements that were in hand for this revised design, and they wanted those as soon as possible. So that's all in the past. UDC, as you all are well aware and have heard more than once tonight, did concur with many of the concerns that the Neighborhood Association and I had, largely revolving around lack of information and lack of some detailed specifics in the design, and obviously granted initial approval rather than final approval at their last meeting. With all that said, I do want to give credit to Aaron and the others that worked on this design. The design progression has been most impressive. I want to give full appreciation and credit where credit is due, that since the Neighborhood Association and I and UDC at their informational presentation last year first saw the original design for this amended PD GDP SIP major alteration, they have done a significant amount of design progression, all in the right direction. Of particular concern were the blank end caps or end walls along East Doty and East Wilson streets due to the stair towers required by the fire code. The design progression is clearly noted on these end walls, but in my estimation, they still need more pizzazz. And I believe that that's the sentiment of my constituents that serve on the Neighborhood Association Steering Committee. So I certainly hope that as it relates to the end wall designs, as it relates to the landscaping, as it relates to the rooftop mechanicals and the details of the HVAC and elevator overrun and so forth, which were lacking, details regarding the loading dock and the door of the loading dock, were all details that the Neighborhood Association is requesting and has not been satisfied yet. Similarly, concerns about the streetscape and encroachment and walkability issues were also articulated by the steering committee. The development team and the Neighborhood Association did have a chance to meet last Tuesday over the lunch hour. Unfortunately, it was an abbreviated amount of time that they had together, approximately 45 minutes, because of all sorts of conflicting schedules of everybody involved. And so we need more conversation. So I certainly hope and am encouraging the development team to meet with the Neighborhood Association Steering Committee at least one final time before they do go to the Urban Design Commission seeking final approval. We don't know when that date is yet. They certainly are not going to be at UDC at their next meeting in 2 days. But when that occurs, either later this month or next month or so forth, I do think that, again, this has come a long way. The outstanding issues, I do want to say here in conclusion, I think are well addressed by the excellent proposed staff conditions, which I know are a part of Vice Chair Cantrell's motion here. In particular, I want to point to the Planning Division and Urban Design Commission conditions of approval that are proposed and are part of this motion. I also want to call out the Traffic Engineering Division conditions relating to TDMP, valet operations plan, and a commercial delivery plan. Those are conditions 42, 43, and 54 respectively under Sean Malloy's proposed conditions on behalf of the Traffic Engineering Division. Those are all critical and will be important moving forward, especially when they are at the staff sign-off stage. So, there were other issues that came up. Sustainability is another one that was asked and answered many times at neighborhood meetings. But the bottom line is I do urge your support for the motion before you. There is a lot to like about this. The design progression has improved substantially since we first saw the initial design late last year. We certainly all welcome the reduced height that is now well below the capital view preservation limits. So again, I don't want to sound overly negative here at all. That is not my intent. But realizing that this has been quite a journey since the 2017 initial PD, GDP, SIP to the alteration a couple of years ago, removing the parking to where we are tonight. I absolutely agree with Vice Chair Cantrell's articulation that the hotel rooms certainly are needed and has been a goal of Judge Doyle Square going back to when former Mayor Dave Chislevich called this public market square. The idea was always to have additional room block to serve Monona Terrace, to allow Monona Terrace to achieve its full potential well into the future, and hopefully financing will be in hand and we can move forward despite the economic conditions facing the hospitality sector today. So I do urge your support for the motion tonight, and especially all these important staff recommended conditions to help address the concerns that are still outstanding among many in the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder Verveer. I appreciate your detailed overview there. Are there any other comments, any questions of Alder Verveer? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote on the motion. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the motion passes unanimously. Next is business by members. Any business by members? Seeing none, the secretary's report. Ms. Stouter. Oh, wait, I see Alder Rummel has a raised hand. Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if, I know that the zoning text amendment about more density and some of that stuff that's moving forward. I'm just wondering if I and other Plan Commission alders are interested in doing some kind of more engagement with people, so it won't seem like we can answer questions and hear concerns before this comes to a vote, if that is something that staff could accommodate.
Ms. Stouter.
Yeah, actually, in the coming week plus, I'm gonna say week plus, we'll be working together to put together a memo that has that puts the ordinances in context and talks about, what percentage of land are we talking about, what percentage of housing units approved over the last few years would have been impacted by these ordinance changes. And so we're pulling together a lot of data now that I think can be helpful to decision makers as this moves forward. And I expect that that memo will be available, and I'll make sure that plan commissioners know when it's available, probably in the next 2 weeks in advance of the Housing Strategy Committee's discussion on this item. So Housing Strategy Committee will meet on February 25th to discuss it, and it's scheduled to be before this body on March 8th, and we'll make sure there are a few weeks in advance of that March 8th discussion that you'll have more information, and also some links to, we have a zoning map, for instance, that we've just made some tweaks to so that alders and those involved with neighborhood associations can zoom in on their areas of interest and start to explore and find the relevant zoning districts and give that more thought. So we are working on some helpful resources to address questions as and before this comes before boards, committees, and commissions.
That's really good to hear. Thank you. I'm glad I asked.
And so that memo, Ms. Stouter, as soon as that is ready for publication, could you send that directly to Plan Commission members? I know they'll be very interested. We all will be very interested in seeing that. So thank you.
Yep, will do.
Okay. Alder Heck.
Thank you. I just wanted to let Alder Rummel and Alder Lemmer and anyone else who's interested know that I think it's Thursday evening. I'm going to make a small presentation on this to the Tenny Lapham Neighborhood Association Council. So I'd be glad to share what I have, which probably will have some of the information that will come later, but it won't be nearly as detailed. But I'd be glad to share that with anybody.
So perhaps you could send that to Ms. Stouter, and then she could share it with Plan Commission members. Would that work? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, then. Secretary's report, Ms. Stouter.
All right. Thank you, Chair Zellers. First, I did want to mention a couple of the recent Common Council actions. So the rezoning proposed along Milwaukee Street and West Corporate Drive. This was the one where the Amazon facility has landed this past year. And I wanted to mention that the council actually ended up placing this item on file without prejudice when they met on February 2nd. And so this was one where it was a very close vote and a long discussion at Plan Commission. The council had another long discussion, and I'd actually encourage you to, if you're interested, to watch portions of that discussion. I think from a staff perspective, it was really important to hear it. I think it's going to guide a lot of our efforts as we think more about how and when to do selective, proactive rezonings in the future. And it was just a really full discussion. And We are aware from Alder Foster that he would like us as staff to prepare a new zoning amendment. And so I would expect that to come before the Plan Commission in the coming months. That has some revisions to the zoning districts being recommended in that area.
Ms. Stouter, could you please send the link to that council meeting along with where the hour and minutes where that particular discussion starts?
I certainly can. I was going to mention I had just done that for many folks on our staff team. So I have those minutes and everything identified. And so I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
A couple other actions worth mentioning. The council, without any discussion, also ended up adopting the new regional mixed use district. And I think, again, this will come into play, as I've mentioned, perhaps in the Oscar Mayer planning area and others. And then also, without discussion, ended up passing really sweeping changes to ordinances as they relate to housing cooperatives. So they're now allowed much more broadly throughout the city in all residential districts. And I really want to give a nod to our colleague, Matt Tucker, who did a lot of work with alders on that subject. And again, it passed with no discussion, but I think it's a really, really amazing change given some of the housing needs that we have in our city. So I wanted to mention those. Looking forward to the February 22nd meeting, the item that was referred to February 22nd, the 126 Langdon proposal, will be on that evening. We'll also have the Triangle Monona Bay Neighborhood Plan Amendment will be before you on that evening. And that's a look at basically what modes of traffic to allow on a portion of the new street being proposed through the area. We do have a few other notable items that meeting. That on your agenda here, you'll see listed the Ramish Farm on the north side. I'm not sure whether that will actually come before you on the 22nd. We'll see. It has been referred to that meeting, but it may be referred further. And we have some small zoning text amendments. One to add live work as a use downtown. Another to expand where chickens are allowed and allow them in neighborhood centers. And then another one related to car washes. I'll move forward now to the March 8th meeting. And this was already discussed thanks to Alder Rummel's question on this, but we will hope to have before you the package of housing related ordinance changes. And I would say that for any of you who are interested in brushing up on this beyond what you'll see in the staff report, I'll also send a link back to your own discussion on January 30th, where I think nearly everything that we're looking at in the proposed ordinance changes was presented to the Plan Commission and discussed on that evening. It's been a while. It's been several months now, but I will also anyway provide that link as a helpful refresher. And I finally wanted to mention, and this is not listed on your agenda here, but we've had a few recommendations that we try to pull together an Urban Design Commission, Plan Commission virtual tour of some recently finished projects, so that we can do something similar to what we usually do together every other year in a bus when we're touring the city. As staff, I think we're excited for this opportunity. Obviously, we've never put together a virtual tour before, but in some ways it affords a better opportunity to see things, on the far east and far west side, and of course the center of the city as well. But we don't have to choose a carefully thought out route if we're doing this virtually. So what I want to say here is that if any of you individually have some ideas of projects that you'd like to see or that you have seen and you'd like to make sure others have a chance to take a look at, feel free to send those to me via email, and we'll try to weave together a nice virtual tour. Not exactly sure how we'll do it, whether it'll be a GoPro or, but we'll make it easy for folks to follow along, probably a video tour of several recently completed projects. So again, feel free to email me if you have specific ideas. I think I'll leave it there for this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Stouter. Any questions of Ms. Stouter? Okay, any other announcements? Then I would be looking for a motion to adjourn. A move by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Sundquist. And we will come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. No raised hands. We are adjourned, and have a good early evening. Take care.